Hey guys, welcome to Draper's Startup House. I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend Rachel Yanko-Martinka. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here.
So, fun fact, Rachel was our very first customer when we opened up in May of 2020, and it was just me, some Wi-Fi, and some just like drip coffee. I was just like, hi, this is a co-working space now. Come hang out with us.
I wanted coffee.
Oh yeah, it was, I also didn't know how to use that drip coffee maker properly, and it was highly caffeinated all the time, but I think you enjoyed that.
That's probably why I kept coming back. Something about this coffee was stronger.
Yeah, so we no longer serve drip coffee. We have wonderful baristas who make dope lattes.
Iced chais.
Iced chais, that's your go-to drink. You love the caffeine.
I do. My mom used to drink 16 cups of coffee a day and then
God.
found out she was pregnant, so there was some period of time where I drank that much.
It's in your blood.
Yeah, it's in my blood.
Yeah, so tell us about the work that you do that is fueled by all of this caffeine. What do you do for a living, Rachel?
Right now, I am a growth strategist with a company called Toasty. So it's a video meeting platform that we really focus on building connections between people. And so I get to come up with new ways to market our to a different audience and identify which audiences we'd be the most useful for and create the events that would be best for the facilitators.
Yeah, it's highly topical, highly relevant. We all need all these online tools. I guess everyone's a Zoom user as of like 2020. It's really forced the adoption.
Yep.
But so for Toasty, maybe where do you see, because it's like a new startup, right? So there's still room to explore.
Totally.
Which niche they're gonna serve, or like who their customer base is gonna be. So how does a platform like Toasty differentiate from just other video conferencing?
Yeah, we have a lot of interactivity options in the platform itself. So trying to, we've ranked very high for happy hours and how to do team building exercises, because people are realizing how real Zoom fatigue is.
Yeah.
And so it's okay, how can we get around that? And so I'm also trying to figure out, do we have a market in people who are teaching online, to keep their kids' attention? Is there a market in conferences if we can build something to help the networking abilities of all these events that are now virtual?
Yeah.
Since that's a huge thing, is missing out on the human interactivity. So
for sure.
That's what we're trying to figure out right now.
Because I think like you said, the Zoom fatigue is real when you use the same application to have your work meetings, and then you catch up with your family members who you're not able to see in person, right? It's, and you're using the same software. It all becomes a bit
Yeah, so people have been using it long enough to realize where it's lacks, where it's lacking, and so trying to identify how to fill those needs and then how to properly market it, even just how do I make sure people open my email? Okay. But I like working for a small group because then I end up wearing a lot of hats. It forces me to learn a lot of new softwares and how to do a lot of different aspects of a job that I probably wouldn't have initially signed up for or have been qualified for, but I'm really good at learning how to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And that's what you need the most in the startup life.
That's the spirit of entrepreneurship, is just being I don't know how to do this, but I guess I'm gonna figure it out now.
The internet is a wealth of knowledge and I can figure out anything in about 5 minutes, and you're let's do it.
So let's talk about that, right? Because you work remotely for a startup. You're based here in Chiang Mai. Where's the rest of the team?
My boss is in Hong Kong. Our designer is in Madrid, and then our tech guy is in the Philippines.
Yeah. So this is the whole future of work vibe, right?
All over the world. Yeah.
How did you get into this? You're now a growth strategist, but how did your career working remotely begin?
Yeah. At first, I thought I had to go get my MBA. So that was the plan, was I left home and I'm okay, I'm going to travel a bit and then I'm going to go get the schooling I need to work online.
Yeah.
But then I realized while traveling, I found a job as a virtual assistant, which is basically an online secretary, and I was oh, I could do this for some part-time money, why not? very menial type jobs or like repetitive tasks.
Yeah.
But it gave me the experience to realize, oh, I'm super qualified for this stuff. And you can work online. You don't need this like higher degree necessarily to just get your foot in the door. And then that was working for a startup as well. And so they realized, oh, you're capable. Here's some more responsibilities. Here's like expanding my ability list. And then after working with them, that opened my door of like, I know where to look for jobs now. I know where to look online. And it was enough to add to the resume of like, I've worked remotely in this capacity. Trust me, with more responsibility and different tasks. So
like, how did that start then? Like, how did you network with your first clients? Did you use a platform to get those first couple of gigs?
Yeah, Facebook actually ended up being a huge job search place, which is very strange. I think when I was in the States, Facebook was just like, I don't need something to distract me, but out here in Asia, it's super instrumental in just getting in front of eyeballs. But I was in the Digital Nomad Coffee Club, chat, and I was just like looking up in the group, and someone's like, hey, we need a VA. And then from there, I was like, hey, we need someone to help plan this conference. And so I started working with the Nomad Summit in that capacity. And so like that was also someone who needed like technically help remotely, but like for an in-person event. So it was nice to have that sort of hybrid as well. But I found both my first remote jobs in this Facebook group. So
I think it's really interesting. Like the Chiang Mai Digital Nomads Facebook group, for example, has like 40,000 people in it, right? And I think because Chiang Mai has been a destination for people like sort of trying out this lifestyle, I think that I've always seen that there's a wealth of exchange happening in there in terms of opportunities, right? Because there are people who maybe are still working on like developing their skill set, so they want to offer their skills at like a more discounted price because what they really want is experience. And then you also have like young companies, other people who are like, okay, I'm a little bit ahead of you, so now I have a budget to hire you, but I don't have the money to commit to a full-time employee yet. So in that way, it's like a very mutually beneficial exchange. They're like, okay, we're all going through trial and error here. It's part of the entrepreneurship process. It's part of learning to be a freelancer, managing a team. Like, let's all take advantage of the talent and opportunities that are going on in this space.
Well, and it's really inspiring to come to places where a bunch of people are working in similar, like at the same speed on whatever project it is they are. So like when I first came to Draper, I was like, oh cool, like I love co-working spaces, and this one happens to be run by people I know and I trust, and I already like being energized, being around them, and so from starting to work online, I realized how much networking can happen in person.
For sure.
And then that expands my network. So even when I finish with one remote job, it's like, okay, now these other fellow entrepreneurs have shown me where to take the next steps, how to grow, how to start my own thing. And so that sort of buzz makes Chiang Mai like super fun to be around.
Something that my partner was talking to me about the other day is like how much knowledge we pick up like passively just by being part of this community in Chiang Mai, right? For example, he's been talking to friends about like Amazon FBA and like drop shipping and like e-commerce, and he's a web developer. He's never done that himself, but like, and I've never done that work either. But just from being here in Chiang Mai and learning from like friends who do that, and just like being able to go to meetups where you can learn this stuff, like I probably know way more about this stuff than the average person, right? Just by virtue of just being in a place.
Totally. Like, it's funny how here the word digital nomad means one thing, and also people laugh at it already because we've heard this talk so many times. But when I went back home in the States, like I was like, oh, I mean, I guess I count as a digital nomad, and they're like, what is that? And it blew my mind. I was like, they don't know what that is? Oh, wow, okay. Well, I've got some education to do here. But you're right, like this passive absorption of knowledge is really probably how we end up getting more and more into trying new careers, even in the remote field. So I've heard a ton about this Amazon thing, going to these like kind of conferences where everyone goes. You hear the people who go for the first time and they're just like, I just really want to learn how to make money online. And they think that's like a checkbox that they can just like do. They just figure it out, okay. And then they go away with like mountains of notes and homework. They're like, I got to figure out which kind of online thing is my online thing.
Yeah, I think that's often the thing, right? People who are interested in being location independent or freelancing, one of the first things they think is like, I just need to be able to make money in any way, shape, or form. But the reality is that if you want to build like a career out of it, you got to figure out like what value you can add, like what are your skill sets.
Right.
And to another completely different end, I think what's so rewarding about like this lifestyle and sort of taking this path and taking an entrepreneurial vibe to it is that oftentimes you're building you're not just doing work, you're not just exchanging time for money just so that you can like survive, but you actually have the flexibility and are encouraged to figure out what you enjoy doing, what makes you feel engaged in your work, like where you actually feel like you're getting energy back from what you put out into the world.
Yeah, and I even realized that in my last job that was working online, at first I was like really invigorated by the type of work I had, but then I was like, oh, you know, like this isn't really like aligning with my personal mission of what I'd like to achieve.
Yeah.
And so when I stopped working with them and I started working with Toasty, one of the first things that caught me in the interview was the CEO being so passionate about like, I want to build connections with people. That's the only reason I'm in this, is I see this as a tool to help build connections between people. And I'm like, he really believes in this, and I love that. And so like I can buy into this mission. And so even when I'm trying to figure out how to use a mailing program, you know, that seems like, oh, is this really helping, contributing? Yes, I'm acquiring new skills. I'm learning how to do more stuff that I can apply towards anything. And I end up finding that I have a lot to share. So when I'm, you know, co-working with people, I'm sitting next to someone who's just like, man, if only I could figure out LinkedIn. I'm like, well, that's what I do, you know? So it's like, okay, I can totally help you out, which is nice.
It's the fun part of co-working, and it's also why it can be, you know, it can be hard to focus, especially when you're just like, I know things and I like to help.
I love helping.
You hear someone complain and you're just like, actually.
It's like, okay, what is my helping commitment list? How long is it? And how much self-care has been scheduled into the process? Because especially like when you start working online, people are just like, oh, you're just on your computer. I'm going to talk to you. And you're like, well, I do need to focus a little bit.
Just a little bit.
So I see like the cubicle purpose now, you know, like, oh, the walls, but I don't want walls.
Yeah, when I was younger, I remember thinking that like, oh God, I would hate if I like had a career where I worked in an office. And now I'm just like, I love my office at home. Like, and even just like the ability to say, I love my boyfriend, I love my pets, but I'm just like, I have doors I can use to just close everything out. And just focus and just do my thing. No one can ask me questions, no one can bother me. So sometimes, you know, I'm in the mood to like be around people, and again, there's so many benefits to that, but honestly, like knowing how to schedule your time, knowing how you are productive, and being able to like make that choice about like, I want to work from home today because like I'm gonna be on a roll and I'm gonna get so much shit done. Well, and I think working remotely gives you the power to decide. Like, that's the freedom we want. I didn't need no walls. I needed the ability to say, well, I'm going to have lunch at 11 o'clock, so I'm going to start work at 9. So by the time I do something at 11, I feel like I've accomplished a lot for the day already. You know, or the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to work in this fancy cafe in the middle of the forest, as long as the Wi-Fi's fine. You know, but I have the freedom to go wherever I want, surround myself with the type of people I want, if I want people, you know, and it's not like be in the office from 8 to 5, you have to do this, there's so much more freedom. And working in a remote atmosphere, the team is also more understanding of that, right? So they're like, do you have 5 minutes? And you're just like, could you give me an hour, because I'm at the gym, you know? And they're like, cool. The beauty of remote life is like, you flexed your time however you needed to. I'm trusting you to be responsible to me when I need you. Yeah, and I think that's the benefit when you work with people who understand working remotely or managing your own time, then there's a respect there for boundaries, and like you get treated like an adult. Rather than having someone just like, you know, feel like they have to like parent and oversee you and micromanage you. You know, it's a nicer dynamic, I think, for preferences.
I love not having to clock in. Like, I love not having, I keep track of my hours just so I know, especially if it's a job where like the hours are specifically billable, but like, I shouldn't be punished for having worked only 3 hours, but creating this much output, you know, so these sort of like priority-driven tasks instead of time-based measurements of success is so much better, because then I feel I'm like, well, I'm just going to have a super productive 2 hours. I can. More so than like 5 hours of just like, I hate what I'm doing. I'm just gonna like be distracted and do less work.
Yeah.
Because I don't like it so much.
But I think that also comes down to who you are as a person. You're very like growth oriented. You like to learn. You love to learn. You're good at it, and that's incredibly valuable to a business, right? Because like you, frankly, will probably be working your ass off at whatever you're doing. You're just you're motivating yourself by choosing to work with a company whose like mission you believe in.
Right.
So you're energized by that work, right?
Yeah.
It's this like virtuous cycle for both of y'all.
Exactly. And I love now that I'm working with something that feels like I can partner with different groups.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, cool. Like, does it benefit you for us to work together? Does it benefit you for us to work together? So I love that, like, it's part of my job now to network for the ability of like, we're growing ourselves, but only if it really benefits you to grow as well, which is really cool.
Finding win-wins.
Yeah,
same girl.
Love the win-wins.
Yeah, so, you know, going back, you started on the virtual assistant track, just taking any job that allowed you to learn, right? So any advice for people who are sort of on the stepping stone and want to be where you are and have a badass career?
Yeah, I always tell people to like start at the beginning. So there's no shame in just starting in a learning position, a junior position. I perceived my VA job as a junior position. I knew that this was temporary, so I was okay with earning less than I probably would have desired if I was earning out west. But I was like, for me, this is my foot in the door. This is me just kind of like earning my grit. But also what would have been beneficial is to learn what kind of jobs exist online. So like I'll go to AngelList and just I'll just see like what jobs are available within this price range. I don't even specify like a type of industry. Because it's like you learn, okay, like there's a bunch of people who need developers and you got to train to do that. But like customer success, you're like, oh, are you good with people? That's a whole job online, you know, like, are you good at data entry? You know, there's so many entry level things. And also looking at your own skill set, it sometimes helps to like go over your resume with the perception of like, what skills can I already say that this could just be done remotely? Because some people are like, well, I've only done this all my life, so I could never, there's no way to become online. And I'm like, no, you take areas of those skill sets you've learned before, and you can do that as long as you can promise to be in charge of your own time. You know, so I think it's super easy for people to get involved online. There's so many job boards, there's so many how-tos. You do not have to buy some like how-to curriculum, some training, some certification. I don't trust those.
I think like learning on the job is a deeper, more enriching experience, and it's easier to motivate yourself because they're like, I have to get this thing done, right? And if you can be getting paid to learn, that's an excellent way to get your foot in the door.
Definitely. And even if you're like getting at the beginning and you can say, here's my resume, and like if anything is less than satisfactory to you, I'm willing to complete like a time-based like test for you to make sure you can trust me, so that you're showing them you're like the ability to like, here, I'm offering this to you, I'm willing to work myself to prove to you, you know, there's so many ways to like get in. And so no one should have to not get in because they think they can't. You can.
I love it. I think sometimes it just takes a little creativity, some practice, but there's so many different ways that you can become location independent. Create the life of your dreams.
Read all the blogs.
We're not selling you a course. We just really are obsessed with this.
It's the freedom. And I see people who are like, man, I wish I could do it. I'm like, you can.
Everyone can.
So can.
So living the dream here in Chiang Mai.
It's awesome.
Great hanging out with you, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned for more awesome stories with wonderful members of our community like Ms. Rachel.
Bye.